Hello and welcome to Pock and Rop. This video is the next in my series ranking the tracks of the Beatles studio albums. This is their final release, Let It Be, released in 1970 but recorded over a year earlier in January 1969 in what we can describe as trying circumstances. It's a difficult listen. It's a variable and much storied album. The album I'm going to be ranking will be the original Let It Be version as put together by Phil Spector. But of course we have the Get Back version that was done by Ethan Johns. There is the Let It Be Naked version, which I vastly prefer to the Phil Spector one. And then there was of course the Behemoth box set that came out as in 2021. There are 12 tracks, and at number 12 I have placed Dig It. Dig It is 1 minute long, and it is 1 minute of a much longer jam, which I find the long thing unlistenable, the short thing barely tolerable. To say that it still overstays its welcome at 1 minute is really describes how I feel about it. I don't think the world would have been upset had this never come out on the original album, and we'd been saying, how was this not included? And likewise for my number 11, which is Maggie May. Both of these are credited to all four Beatles because they were fun jams while they were kind of mucking around in the studio in Savile Row. And they're both about a minute long. Maggie May is marginally more fun, and that's why it gets number 11. And number 10, I have placed Across the Universe. I don't like this song. It is utterly out of place on Let It Be, because it was recorded a year before Let It Be was recorded. I prefer the version that is on Past Masters Volume 2, but the version that's on Let It Be, Phil Spector shagged it. And even then, it's not actually a song I like. There's much about it that I find irritating. It's an irritating song to me. And I know that'll get some people's backs up because others think it's one of the greatest songs John ever wrote. Not for me. And number 9, I have placed One After 909. There's nothing wrong with One After 909. It could easily have actually been on Please Please Me. They did record a version back in 62, 63. But it probably shows you just how much contempt the Beatles themselves had for the track, that they never bothered to revisit again until the Get Back sessions, when it perhaps it fit the remit of what they were trying to do. But does it fit the remit of the album? Maybe. I think they played it on the roof, and so there is some interesting cultural artifact status to it. One After 909's fine, and it's early Beatles, and it feels and sounds like early Beatles despite being 1969. At number 8, I have placed The Long and Winding Road. The Phil Spectorisation of this is a crime. One that actually Paul cited in his lawsuit about what was done to the track. The orchestral parts, that's fine. The choir is criminal. And it's not one of Paul's greatest ballads. And yet this reached number 1 in the US when it was released as a single. And that means it also finishes off the Beatles' one compilation. It's a bit too syrupy. That's the problem with Long and Winding Road. It's my number 8. At number 7, I have placed Dig a Pony. Dig a Pony's fun. It's not a great Lennon song. I think it is. It's not try hard. It's try not hard at all. I think Lennon was seriously phoning stuff in the late 68 into early 69 period. He didn't want to be a Beatle anymore. He'd found a new love. All power to him. And this has that feel of being a bit phoned in, Dig a Pony, to me. It's my number 7. We're halfway through, so this is the point at which I would remind you to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Join our growing subscriber count. To like the video by clicking the thumbs up, to ring the bell to receive notifications of future videos as they come out, and share the video with someone else, and perhaps, if you're watching on the right device, give it that hype button. All of this will help grow the channel. So, returning to the ranking for number 6, which is I've Got a Feeling. I've Got a Feeling is never going to be a favourite Beatle track of mine, but I do enjoy the interplay between Paul and John on this song. The smushing together of the two tracks, merge them together. We've got Screaming Paul, which is always a fun thing, particularly when you watch it on the Get Back documentary, and Sardonic John, and it works. And I think it opens side 2 if I remember correctly. I like it enough. Moving on to number 5, and I have placed George Harrison's For You Blue. This is a fun blues song, and it's great to watch it in the Get Back documentary and see John playing the slide guitar. And this was probably going to be the only George song on the project, but for something that happened as a result of the movie, and we could have ended up with a lost Beatles classic, which I'll touch on in a bit. It's the only thing they actually recorded of George's properly in '69, and it was the B-side of the Long and Winding Road single in the US. George had better songs to come and had done better songs before, but For You Blue, it's a fun track, and it did show that despite the January '69 headaches, there was fun still to be had. At number 4, I have placed Get Back. Now, Get Back is a great song. It was a great single. However, it had come out in May 1969 as a single, and the rooftop version is what was included on, or was it? Or was it? Or maybe it was the same as the single version, but what the one clever thing that Phil Spector did was to make it sound like it had been done live, with all the studio chatter and the comment about I'd like to thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we passed the audition, when they were being led off the roof. The reason I placed it at number 4 is because it had already come out, and the single version is the definitive for me. Although it's really fun to watch its evolution on the Get Back documentary and watch Paul pluck the song out of thin air. It's my number 4 as far as the Let It Be album is concerned. Number 3, I have placed George's I Me Mine. This is one of my favourite George songs. It almost got lost. It was included in the film by Michael Lindsay Hogg, and we have the film to thank for the fact that we have a studio version of this. The Beatles who actually recorded this were Paul, George and Ringo. It is a powerhouse of a performance, and John wasn't there. And this was actually recorded in January 1970. So the Beatles, as a recording entity, limped on into January 1970, thanks to I Me Mine and thanks to Michael Lindsay Hogg. Its version on the album is the one saving grace of Phil Spector having been involved with the Beatles at all, because he had the idea of taking what had been recorded, the verse and the chorus, and chopping bits and repeating bits and turning it into a fully fledged song. I really like I Me Mine a whole great deal, and one of the 3 10 out of 10 tracks, I think, that are on the Let It Be recording. And number 2, I have placed The Two of Us. Paul's song about him and Linda, but may also have been about him and John. And the harmonies between Paul and John and the recording of it in the studio, and the troubles that they had with Paul playing bass on it, when actually it needed him to play the acoustic guitar and be real with the song. Two of Us is a lovely song that opens the whole record. I like it a lot. And at number 1, I have placed Let It Be. Let It Be is a masterpiece, no matter what John might have thought of it. The fact that they released Get Back as a single, I understand, it made sense, but they could have released Let It Be as a single in 1969 as well. They held it back until Let It Be was cobbled together from all of the tapes, and it's a cracking song. I again probably just prefer the single version because it's George Martin producing and not Phil Spector, but it's such a great song. It's a genuine classic, and it's my number 1 off the Let It Be album. So that concludes my ranking of the 12 tracks of Let It Be as released in 1970. I don't plan on going back and having a go at the Get Back album or indeed Let It Be Naked, so this is it. It concludes the studio album rankings. However, it doesn't conclude the series because I said I skipped over Magical Mystery Tour because it's a compilation. And so I am going to go back. I'm going to do Magical Mystery Tour as the next part in this series. And then I'm going to do Past Masters Volume 1 and Past Masters Volume 2. And that will conclude what is the Beatles' official canon of albums. And yes, I'm aware that they are compilations, but they're important. They're important compilations that collect together so much stuff. It's December 2025, which means that some of the videos that will be coming out over the course of this month will be my usual reviews of the year, songs of the year. I'll be involving my son on our album rankings of 2025. But until the next video, I'd remind you to subscribe, like, hit the bell, share, hype it, and thanks for watching.